All new this morning on 41 Action News Today, we are taking a deeper look at the search for answers to recent violence. This morning, Kansas City sits at 153 homicides in 2020, tied with the all-time record of 153 set in 1993.
As you know, after most of those homicides, we share the TIPS hotline number with you and ask you to call if you have any information. Those tips could mean life-changing money for the people who call in, but they absolutely change the lives of the victims' families.
My son, my oldest, Jeff Rogers, was murdered here in Kansas City, Kansas on April the 9th, 2008, home invasion.
Someone came into where he lived?
They kicked his door in a little after midnight. He fought with them. They shot him, stabbed him, and took off running.
He was alone in the house?
He was alone in the house.
Corey was 22, and he was walking home from Quick Trip off of 39th and Independence. His friend came up behind him, put a knife to the back of his neck. Corey jerked his head this way, and it caused a gouge into the side of his neck. He jumped up, causing 2 cuts along the top of his legs, and started turning around, and the knife went in here and came out here.
Corey Lakovich and Jeff Rogers never met. They died violently 5 years apart. But today, years after their deaths, their mothers still tell their stories and the role the TIPS hotline played in finding their killers. Nancy Euler waited more than a decade for an arrest to be made in her son's murder.
I got the phone call. We think we know something. Something was called into the Crime Stoppers. We think we know, and it was about a week later, and they made their arrest, and I am grateful for the person that called in.
She told me that she thinks about the break in her son's case every time she sees a new homicide reported.
Even if you think you know something, call it in, get your code. And like I said, it might not be anything, but maybe it puts part of the puzzle together.
Michelle Mechie used the TIPS line to keep her son's death in the public eye. Her family gave multiple $500 donations to Corey's supplemental reward fund. And each time they did, Crime Stoppers reissued the details of his case to local media. Michelle says she was confident all along that someone knew something, but she also knew people aren't normally inclined to help.
It's called the bystander effect. And it's what happens at car wrecks. You know, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to stop for this car wreck because somebody that's got better information is going to do it. And people always assume someone else is going to step forward.
Since June of 2019, when that $25,000 reward was instituted for tips leading to a homicide arrest, 18 rewards have been approved for that amount. Only 6 have ever been claimed. That's more than $250,000 left on the table. And because of the anonymous nature of the TIPS line, it'll likely never be claimed.
And I think it's important for all of us to say, who do we want to be?
Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas told me that he knows he's not the only Kansas Citian who hears gunshots in his neighborhood, almost to the point of getting used to it. But he says that can't happen.
It is about people talking. It is about tips. It is about how you solve each individual crime. That's the way we dig ourselves out of it. From what I've seen from going to a lot of American cities and talking to a lot of mayors, is that there is not a magic wand approach. That's going to be murder by murder.
That is an almost overwhelming thought, considering this year's record-breaking homicide pace, which Lucas says he'll regret for the rest of his life. But the families on the other end of that number are waiting for heroes to pick up the phone.
It takes a very special person to run into a fire while everyone else is running out. And what we're looking for are those people that are convicted enough that they would say, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do.
Once again, if you know anything about any of the dozens of unsolved homicides in Kansas City this year or any other year, call that TIPS hotline or visit the Crime Stoppers website. The information right here on your screen. You will remain completely anonymous. We can't stress that enough. They can't track who you are. They give you a number when you call in. The tips are paid out in cash, so you can't even be tracked that way when you were possibly going to cash a check or anything like that. They are paid out in cash. They will not know who you are. Call in, maybe help some family heal today.